So here is the Love Runner, Crazy Love. And what I want to do is show you how I go about choosing the fabric for this runner. So I have a bunch of fabrics picked out here. And what I'm going to do is they're just kind of crazy bright, interesting fabrics that I love to buy and sometimes don't always use. So what I'm going to do first of all is categorize them like in the darker groups and the brighter groups. So like, for example, I have these kind of bright reds and pinks and some kind of greens. And so how do you choose what goes where? So I'm going to start by deciding what I want for my background. I think I'm going to choose dark pieces for my background. And so I would go about by putting all my darker pieces up here. And they've got a lot of pattern in them. And that's fine as well, as long as I have a good contrast with the other pieces that I have pulled out. So there's quite the collection, but you can see a difference between these right here and these right here. So I think I'm going to start with the letter L, and I'm kind of loving this piece right here. So I want something that contrasts good with that. And so, like I don't feel like that's as good a contrast. This one is very directional, so if my strip was cut crooked or not, you could tell immediately. So I think I might even kick that one out. That one I'm not fond of with that fabric. This one seems nice, but it's very, very solid. I want a little bit more pattern for this particular one, so I'll kick that one out for a minute. I'm looking, this would be good and be very bright, and that would tone it down a little bit. So I think I'm going to go with my L and this for the background. For the O, I'm thinking, I'm really loving this fabric, which I do have more of. So I'm thinking, and that would be a nice background next to that. I could use this one for the O. And I think that looks good. That one doesn't have a lot of pattern in it, but I think it has enough. It pulls in some of the orange from over here. And then for the V, I don't want to get all blue, so I think I'll throw maybe this one in. See how that looks next to that background. That looks fine. For the V, I could choose that, but it doesn't, I guess it does have that pink in it. It could go well with that. So that looks okay. So maybe that would blend too much. That one wouldn't even show up at all. That one would work, but it looks pretty wild next to that light pink. I think that one will work for me. So I have L, O, V, and then for the E, so I have these backgrounds. I could use that as a background, and those all go well together. Or I could do that. That one's pretty good. I could choose that one or that one. So for these are the same print. So I think I'll kick that one out. That would blend too much. Well, that's pretty, but I think it would blend too much with that or that one. Try that one again. I'm a little worried that if I cut it crooked that would show too much. So I have this cool one with the birds in it. Oh, I kind of like that. Maybe I could fussy cut some of those. So if I go the L and the O and the V and the E, and I think I won't use those, even though they're cool. And I won't use these. So that works for that. I have a couple sashing strips to end. And I always like to choose these after I've picked everything else out. But just to show you real quick, I want something that's going to look a little bit different from the rest. And I've decided not to match colors on that, but just instead to go with like a black and white, which I love to use black and whites to wake things up with. So as I'm looking at all of these, I think that these two are too similar. And so if I were to choose one over the other, I think this has an interesting pattern and it's not perfect circles. Same here, but I'm kind of leaning more towards that. It's not quite as white in the background, so it calms it down just a little bit. So I think I'm going to pull this one out. This one I'm going to keep in for just a second because it does kind of the same thing as this one. It's not quite so solid looking, so heavy black and white like this one. Let's see. So I want two definitely different black and whites. I think these two right here, again, even though this one's really inky black, I think I would use either one of them, but not both. This is a totally different piece. And that one's really, you know, I think either these two, well, we'll see in the end where I go. I think those two are too light. So here's sort of my choices, and I'll decide on the sashing strips in the end. Here's the fabric for my letter L, and this is for the background. And I have this gray piece of fabric laying here so you can see the actual size of a fat quarter. So you can see on some of the letters you'll have quite a bit left over. So you can decide, you know, when you want to just use scraps and cut the pieces as necessary. This one is directional, so I needed the whole width of that fat quarter. And this is going to be the letter L. And so you can see I don't really need all that fat quarter at all. So again, cut from, you know, scraps if you want, have fun with this. So next I'm going to show you how to sew this piece together and how to cut it. So the first thing it's going to tell you is to take the 1.5 inch strip right here and sew it to the end section of this piece, the 6x7. So I'll go ahead and do that. So now I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to turn it sideways like this. And here I have my piece. I'm going to always press all the seam allowances towards the dark side, okay? And it's going to show you to take your spider web ruler and set it right here in the corner like this. And right there, you're going to begin cutting. You can slide it, you know, wherever you want, as long as you start cutting right there on the edge. So if you're more comfortable aligning up a line, that's fine, but just make sure that it's right where that fabric starts, okay? So this is for the L. I'm going to come across like this, press down, and cut. So now I'm going to sew these two together, and what you want to do is you want to offset that angle. And you always want to start sewing on both pieces of fabric. So pull that up until you see right where the 1/4 inch is, right here. And that's where you start your seam allowance. Don't cover up the point. Just move it down to where it starts right here. And that's... Okay, and here it is. And once again, I've pressed to the dark side. And now I'm going to put it right next to this. And go ahead and sew this. So this is... And so here it is. And so now all I'm going to do is trim that top section off, because you can see that I'm at 15.5, which is exactly where I want to be. And even if I was shorter, it doesn't matter, because we can align all of these, we can size all of these up later on with the sashing. So that completes the L. And now I will move on to the next letter. Okay, for the letter O, here's my fabric, and once again I have the fat quarter here so you can see how much fabric you'll really need. And I need 2 12-inch wide by 3-inch pieces and one 12 inches wide by 9 inches high. So I'll set those out of the way for a minute. And what it tells you to do next is to take your spiderweb ruler. So 8.5 and 8.5 is right here. I'm going to go ahead and cut on both sides. You can see you cut all the way past the angle or the tip. That's a discard right there. So again, like this. And the 8.5 is right there, and I'm going to go ahead and cut. So the next thing I'm going to do is to take these two pieces, lay them on top of each other, just like that. Then I'll take a straight edged ruler like this, and I'll align the edge, and then I'll move it over 1, 2, 3 inches. 1, 2, 3 inches, and I'll go ahead and cut. This is aligned right here on this angle. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this one. I'm going to go ahead and rotate that. So I have 3 inches from the edge. And all you have left over is these little triangles right here. So once I have those cut, I'll set those aside, and I have 2 of each of those. And here is the fabric for the background of the letter O. And so I have my 2 smaller pieces that are 1.25 inches by 8. And then this is what's left, and it's 10 inches high. And I'm going to take my ruler and put it on and align the 10-inch measurement with the bottom edge, just like that. And then rotate the ruler. And again, the 10-inch goes right there at the top. And you could mark that with a piece of tape or just pay attention. And then I'm going to take these 2 pieces and layer them exactly on top of one another. And I'm just going to align them here with a straight edge on my cutting mat. And put the tip right in the middle of a number. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut those in half. So I'm going to have 2 of each direction. Trim the remaining piece to a 9-inch length. And you can, doesn't matter how you do it, either way, just bring the edges together like that. Then you're going to take your ruler and use the 9-inch placement line right on the fold, and you're going to cut along both edges. Okay, so there's the center, and then you want to bring in your other pieces that you already cut, and for the letter itself. And remember, these little pieces right here, one's going to go on each side like that, and you're always going to align the horizontal edge up here, okay, because you'll always have a little bit of excess that'll fall down here. So don't center it, or don't try and match that edge. It's the top edge and the bottom edge. So those 2 are going to go on, and then we'll trim those to fit. So I'll go ahead and sew those. If you have any excess right here, you could trim that straight, just like that with the other angle. So there's always updates to every pattern. So sometimes, you know, again, if these are bigger or smaller, what you want is just a nice straight edge right here and here. So here's the fabric, and the straight grain is going this way because the pattern is designed for you to always cut it so the grain is going vertically and horizontally. So you're always going to match the top horizontal edge and the bottom horizontal edge down here. So there we go there, and get rid of that excess. So now it's time to add the top and bottom. strip right here. So there we go, and I'm gonna go ahead and trim this angle to match. So there we go, and now we just need to put on the little background pieces. So these are gonna go on next, and down here, and you're just gonna center those, because again, those are gonna be trimmed as well. And like this. Okay, so here is those two edges, and again, you always want to align the horizontal edges when you sew, not the angles. So here we go. I'm going to trim those off. And now I'm going to add the last two pieces to complete the O. And again, make sure that you're aligning down here, not like this. So I can see that this measures a little bit more than 16 inches. So before the end, before I put them all together, I might trim that to a 15.5 inch, or I can adjust the length with the sashing. So that completes the O. Now, here's my fabric for the letter V. Okay. 13 by 16, and then you take and you fold it in half. That's all you'll need for the letter V. And so I have the fold right here, and I'm going to take a long edged ruler, and I'm going to cut from the fold all the way up to the point. Then I'm going to open it up just like this. I'm going to use a straight edged ruler, and I'm going to cut 3.5 inches from one edge. So I have 1, 2, 3.5 inches. And then I'm going to rotate the ruler and then come right there and do the same thing. To make it easier for me, I'm going to turn it. So there's 3.5 inches right there. And now I'm going to do the background. Okay, I'm going to fold it in half like the other piece. Okay, and if you wanted to double check the angle, one thing you could do is lay your straight edge ruler from the chalk point to the corner, and just take your spider web ruler and lay it on top of it, and that straight center line should align right with the fold. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut. I'm going to open this up. I'm going to set this aside, and I'll take the other two background pieces from the fold and open those up and put these pieces in here like this, and that in here. So there is the letter V. So you can see that it's longer than it needed to be. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and connect this down here and sew that together, matching these points, offsetting those points right there. Okay, so you can see the top is crooked. I'm not going to worry about that just yet. I'm going to sew the other pieces on first. So I'm going to start on this side and match that edge and come down to here, and then I'll match the bottom and sew up that way. Okay, so here that is. And what I'm going to do next is trim the point of the V, right? And then I'm going to add this piece, and this time I'm going to match the bottom and sew from the bottom up. Okay, so here's the V, and just going to get it along a straight line and check it out. I want it to be at least 15.5, and it's almost 16, and so I've got lots of wiggle room. And that completes the V. And just like that, on the edge of the fabric to cut those pieces. And so you see these are directional, so I wanted to show you, you know, how you, if you do have directional fabric, you wouldn't cut it all the same way. Set it aside. So I've already pre-cut these for my E. And I'll set those right there, and then you'll see, so I'm going to cut this in half. Okay, and now you're going to see how it goes together. So to finish up the letters, I'm just going to sew those 3 units together. Then I'll add this to the back and the top and bottom. Okay, I'm going to straighten up these edges just a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to add the top and the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and trim all my letters to an exact 15.5 inches long. This one is 16, so probably take a 1/2 inch off of each end. I want to have just enough so that edge shows. Now I have to just add one more on each side, and I will be done. And there you go.